Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me. It's another lovely sunny day here in the UK, and I hope it's rather nice where you are. Today, I wanted to talk about snare drums. Now, I know I've talked about my Ludwig 400 and my other snare drums that I've got here and also at the studio and stuff. So it's not about that necessarily, about my snare drums. It's more about how, as drummers, we need to look at our snare drum as being, a focal part of the music that we're playing, the style that we're playing, and also the tuning of it. Because this was triggered by a friend of mine who had contacted me, and he'd been in the studio, and he said, "Oh, I can't believe it. The person who was recording us didn't like the sound of my snare, and they had no idea that it's a DW or Pearl or whatever it was, so-and-so, and how much it costs, and, so-and-so plays one, and it's a great drum, and da-da-da-da." And after the little rant, I kind of said, well, at the end of the day, the person who's putting the microphone on the drum and sat behind the desk listening to it isn't going to be a drummer. They're not going to be full of, oh, Steve Gadd plays this drum, or it's a Chad Smith model, or it's this, that, or the other, or how much it is, or where you got it from, or how old it is. They're listening just what the drum sounds like on the music they're recording, and they're going to give you their honest opinion. I've just noticed it looks like I've got Batman coming out the top of my head occasionally, which is quite fun. That's what they're interested in. And at the end of the day, they're there to serve you. So if you then record that song, take it home and listen to it, and then realise that you don't like it, or someone says, oh, that snare drum's clashing with the guitar, it's clashing with the vocal, or it's getting in the way of this, that, and the other, then you're going to go, well, that should have been the sound man, or sound person should have, listened to it and said, well, hang on a minute, that's not right. So, and they don't really want to start a conversation with a musician about their sound, of course, they're very well schooled in how to do that. I remember Stuart Bruce said to me that, 75% of recording musicians is sort of babysitting the musicians to make sure they're all happy, and understanding how to deal with them in that way, and people manage. And he is so good at it. And Tom Dalgetty and Rick Simpson and so many producers I've worked for are just brilliant at it. So, I just wanted to cast a different light on it for my mate. And he was like, yeah, I never really thought of that. So, it just made me think that it's worth, and I know I've touched on it maybe once before, but with your snare drum, when you've got time, whether it be a wood shell or brass or bronze or wood, whatever wood it is, it's worth, if you've got some time in a practice room or you're at home or whatever, and you're not going to upset anybody, try tuning the drum in different ways. Now, one of the people that sometimes one of the things that I'll, post about is my Linn drum. Now, I know some people go, oh, Linn drum, oh, the death of all live drumming in the 80s and all that, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with that at all. I think, like Steve Ferrone said from the Average White Band, instead of moaning about it, I went out and bought one and learned how to use it. And then I started programming and people would employ me like Shaka Khan to program tracks on their albums, like he did when she covered that Prince song, I Feel For You. He did the programmed drums on that, and that whole album actually, which I can't remember what it's called, but I've got it on CD somewhere. But yeah, that's the attitude that wins, I think. Anyway, but there are certain sounds that may live on a drum machine that sometimes producers, engineers or other musicians might say, I want your snare to sound like that. Look at what happened with drum and bass. And look how Jojo Mayer and Thomas Lang, those drummers back in the day started playing in that style and started, and Johnny Rabb as well was a really cool at that, putting little splashes on the snare drum and designing cymbals to sit on snare drums that you could use as like a gate and stuff, stuff that was just fantastic. And the metallic sounds that they got, and it made us, a bit like the Linn drum, it made us go out and go, okay, well, we're not going to be defeated by this. We're going to go out and we're going to win. We shall win over this thing, or at least if it's not winning, it's like competing and doing it as a human being rather than just, programmed, whether it be on a drum machine or on software. I'm looking at my laptop, by the way, if you think, I wonder why I'm doing this typewriter thing. Because again, another side of this, there's a few sides to this, is that once we've got a sound we like, we go into the studio, and again, it might not suit the track we're playing. And if it has to come up or down or be more mid, tuning, then, we kind of have to get rid of this, like, yes, but that's my sound, that kind of attitude, and say, okay, well, that's cool. What does it need to be? And then the next time you go back into the control room and you listen, and the snare drum is now sat in the track, whether it be high, mid or low tuning or somewhere in between, you'll be thankful because it'll sound fantastic and people will start commenting. And it's a lesson I had to learn. I spoke about CCW project the other day. And I think I've said before that I didn't rim shot very often. And not necessarily on the recording sessions, but when I was playing live, I had to sort of start to learn to rim shot because I wasn't good at it. And I think an engineer once came up to me, grabbed a stick and just smashed the drum, said, like that, that's what it should sound like. And I was like, oh, okay, there was me kind of playing in the middle, being all jazzy. And, and he was like, yeah, you still hit in the middle, but you hit the rim. I was like, yeah, I know what it is, but I don't always do it, dear chap. So I had to learn that. So that was something that I had to learn. And also on the Modern English tour, it was mid-90s and I took out a piccolo. It was a highlight piccolo in red maple, beautiful drum, 14x4, whatever it was. And I remember the MD was not happy. He was like, well, can we get at least a 5-inch drum or 6.5? And I was like, oh, no, that's not the thing. Have you not heard what was it? There was that Two Princes track that had that sort of snare sound. I was like, that's the sound. And it was the in sound. And we got to, I think it was the Coca-Cola Starplex. And he told me to come out to the sound booth. It was like, tell Rob to come out to the sound booth. So I wandered up and then one of the technicians hit the drum and it was obviously a nice sound, but it just sounded thin because it's a thin shell, it's not very deep. It's got no real body to it. And he said, do you see what I'm saying now? So it was only when someone else hit it and I was out the front and I could hear it, I thought, oh yeah, that's really not the sound. So for the rest of the tour, I changed it up to a Ludwig 400 and I just used the highlight as a spare. So, I've had my fair share of this and being told it's not the right drum and sulking, so you learn to work through it. And in the end, a different professional head comes on and says, look, it's about the track. It's not about your snare drum and how old it is and so on and so forth. And another bugbear for people, I know, talking about the Lindrum, is that sometimes, as I say, people are like, ooh, but the thing is, I've learned a lot from having that Lindrum and listening to the music of that period, because I grew up through that period, didn't I? I was 10 in 1980, so my brain was open to all the stuff that was about to happen musically. And that deep snare sound sometimes fits a certain style of music. And I know someone commented just the other day, oh, Lindrum, but, again, in a professional situation, if you're Ludwig 500 or, my DW isn't cutting it at the tuning it's at, whatever snare I'm using, then I have to tune it down. I tune it down, put some moon gels on it, change the sound, and all of a sudden, yes, it might not suit a local sort of brushes jazz gig anymore, or a blues rock gig, but I'm there in that session to produce that sound, and I need the tools there to help to do that, to equip me to get the sounds quickly that the engineers or musicians, producers, what they want, and it's a real challenge, and I love it. And so I think it's one of the reasons why. I've got a lot of sessions because I don't come in with preset ideas, and I know I've done videos on how I prepare, so I don't need to go through that. But certainly having 3 or 4 snares is a thing. And I think back in the day I had 25 snares. Excuse me, just have a quick sip of tea. Back in the day, I had a picture somewhere, but I can't find it. And of course, through the years, I get rid of them, because you may need the money, or, you just don't use them anymore, and you don't want them sat around getting dusty. So being able to take the snare drum down to that dreaded Lindrum sound is there's a professional reason to do it. It's not something that I would say, oh, that's not right. That's not a drum should have that nice Chad Smith crack or Buddy Rich crack. It's like, well, that's only one sound. And for me, I'm like a musical chameleon. I need to be as many different sounds as I can be. So, don't be too biased, snare drum bias and tuning bias. Sometimes the other flip side of this again is someone will say, look, not being rude, but all your snares are lovely, really like them. But you know what? I've got this, and it could be like an old Olympic or something, it could be anything, Pearl, whatever, Woolworths, who knows. But it sounds great in this room. And I think it will sound great on this track because I know this the room, because obviously it's their recording studio. And I've gone, yeah, okay. And, inside I'm thinking, oh, blimey. But once you've played it a few times, done a few takes with it, and you hear it sits well in the mix, you're like, yeah, great, thank you. Amazing. And what a great sounding drum. And that's why when I went to Tristan's all that time ago and picked up that Jug snare drum, I wasn't sort of going, I've never heard of this drum, that's crazy, you know, oof, let's move on to a 70s Ludwig acrolite or whatever, you know, because part of my brain wants to do that because you're told that's what we should be playing and that's the thing. But actually it was like, no, I'm going to try it. It's got a comedy name, but let's give it a go. And it was great. And again, I've done a video on that, so I don't need to go on about that. But it's this sort of like buying with your ears, you know, rather than your eyes. Same with cymbals, same with drum kits, same with everything. Really important. So I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a fleet of snare drums. What, does anybody know what a collection, a gathering of snares would be? Yeah, we'll have to come up with a name for that. So leave some comments below if you think of any, or message me, whatever. But, you know, just having 5 or 6, 4, 3, even 2, just a steel shell or whatever, and a wooden snare. If you know how to tune them and how to get sounds and maybe put, you know, the big fat snare head on top of it or change it up, then maybe 1 or 2 moon gels, sometimes 5 or 6, because I've sometimes put 6 on a snare and people comment, wow, you know, that's a lot of moon gel. Is the drum actually going to make any noise? It's like, well, it's going to sound very douche-like because it's tuned very low, but you're not here on the session. You don't know what music we're recording today. You know, if you like it bright and open, because I know some people do, I get students saying, oh no, I can't have even 1 moon gel. I like it open. You know, I always very gently say, well, there could be a time when you record or are playing live when that ring is going to get in the way of everything. And you might just want to calm it down a little bit. As I say, it's a learning process. Talking to a lot of engineers and producers, it's really opened my ears and eyes to, you know, over the years. I mean, I'm talking way back now when I was 20 or something, back in, you know, the 1900s. And, you know, talking to those guys and gals and hearing what they had to say about what they wanted from my drum sound, and horror stories they've had with sometimes quite famous people, you know, not being very good at tuning or not being open to different sounds, whatever. I've learned from all of that and try to develop, you know, a kind of working kind of mentality where I can go in and any sound I can get, hopefully. And as I say, I'm happy for them to say, do you mind trying this? You know, I mean, this drum kit behind me that, you know, I feel that I'm actually kind of curating and looking after this Shelly Man kit, which I will do something on. People keep saying, stop talking about other stuff with this behind you. It's unfair. We want to hear it. I will do it. It's just finding time to get out to NARM Studios or wherever, and 1, record with it, and 2, just to play it would be nice. Maybe this weekend I'll get a chance to get out there and play it. And if so, of course I'll film some stuff. But it's a 1966 Shelly Man model, 2013, 16. But anyway, that shell's on this kit. I mean, the reason that I wanted to look after it and to use it, and not for it to gather dust somewhere, was because, though it is at the moment, was because the shells were so good. And as I say, I'll save a lot of it for when I do the sort of playing a review of it. But it certainly tunes nicer than my Ludwig Super Classic. It just goes to other places and gives me other options. So yes, snare drums. You know, let's try not to be biased about snares. I haven't got one snare that does everything. It's nearly impossible. I know I talk about the one I call the Hitmaker very pretentiously, the 14x8 DW collectors. It's a beautiful drum because it can do the ethereal stuff like and tune quite high to do maybe things like the Lorena McKinnon stuff, or also mid-tuning for that as well. But it'll also go right down to do the kind of industrial electronic stuff that I record and have recorded with people, and with some moon gels it'll go right down to, it actually sounds like a sample. I've had people say that's a sample. It's like, nope. And even Rick Simpson, when I worked with him on the Laura Pausini album, the Grammy-winning album, he was knocked out at how low I could get that drum, and he called it the douche, the snare drum of doom. So it's now, I guess I should call it the snare drum of doom, not the Hitmaker. But then snare drum of doom sounds a bit kind of depressing on a sunny Friday morning. But anyway, so yeah, so you know, all those drums bring different characters, and you learn a lot more about yourself and about music, because if the snare isn't sitting in the right pitch for the song, it's getting in the way of the vocal or getting in the way of the music in any way, that's not good, really. That's some very unhappy people in a control room thinking, oh, we're going to keep recording with this and it's not right. Okay, well, see what we can do in the mix kind of thing. But once something's recorded like that, it's really hard to get rid of it. So you'll be, you know, your musician's best friend, you'll be the producer's best friend, and the engineer's best friend. If you can just take some of this on board that I'm talking about today. I might add some playing stuff onto the end of this video. I don't know yet. There was an improvisation I did midweek, and I did a few different versions. So I might just put that, in fact I will. I'll bung those at the end, and they'll probably be on my shorts, YouTube shorts at some point. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. As usual, please leave any comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, why not subscribe? Pass this channel on to your friends, other drummers and musicians that might be interested. And I'm off on tour with Sue next week. So hopefully I'll be able to film some stuff in time. If not, I apologize. I'll try and get something out there, maybe something from the hotel rooms and sound checks. I don't know. But have a great week. Keep on drumming, keep safe, and I'll see you soon.